What's up, everybody? I'm Matt Gary, and in this episode of Coding with the Force, we're going to go over what Apex Managed Sharing is in Salesforce. Alright, everybody, so today we are going to go over what Apex Managed Sharing is in Salesforce. We'll find out when we should use it, what it is, why it's useful, and most importantly, we'll do a code example together for both an out-of-the-box standard object and a custom object in Salesforce. So as far as what Apex Managed Sharing is, it is basically a way for you as a developer or an architect or whatever else to create your own custom methods to share data programmatically in Salesforce, right? So you will very likely at some point in your career on the Salesforce platform run into a situation where sharing rules won't work, the role hierarchy won't work, territories won't work, everything else that's out of the box just won't quite work for your sharing purposes. Even, users sharing manually, which I very rarely personally suggest, they just don't work for your needs. And that is when Apex Managed Sharing comes in. And as far as when you should use this, you should literally only use it in that case. You should exhaust every other configuration-based security option before you delve into the realm of Apex Managed Sharing, like we're going to go over today. And I say that because while Apex Managed Sharing is extremely useful and very powerful to allow you to do any combination of sharing that you can think of, it's also very dangerous in that it is now entirely up to you as the developer and the development team to make sure that you get it right. And what I mean by getting it right is you distribute the shares to the correct people always, or as close to 100% of the time as you possibly can, because sharing data with the wrong people in some orgs can be a catastrophe. And once you get into the realm of Apex, if you're not careful with what you're doing, that can be really bad. You could, errors in this kind of code are not errors that you want to have. And, when you get into the realm of Apex Managed Sharing, you have to worry about distributing the shares and removing the shares when it's necessary, right? Maybe somebody is no longer part of one sales team. Okay, well, you have to figure out also programmatically when that's happened and remove the shares that person had because they were on that sales team, so they don't have all the records shared with them that once were. There's nothing automatic in the background that's fixing that for you anymore. So you've got to, do everything now. So when to use it? Only when you are 110% sure it is your only path to success. You should absolutely only use this as your final option. And I say that as somebody who really, really loves to code. This is not a place you want to be unless you need to be in it. As far as why it's useful, Apex Managed Sharing, just like I said before, it allows you infinite sharing possibilities, right? Whereas you can easily get locked down to certain sharing situations in the configuration-based sharing. You can basically do literally whatever you want with Apex Managed Sharing for the most part. And so, there's really no limit there, as there is with configuration-based stuff almost always. All right, so let's figure out together, now that we kind of know what Apex Managed Sharing is and why it's important and all that kind of stuff. Let's figure out how we actually make an Apex managed share in Salesforce, and let's figure out the differences between a custom object and an out-of-the-box object, because unfortunately they are different. So the first thing that we're going to do is create what's called an Apex sharing reason. And the reason that we're going to do that is because whenever we create our Apex managed share programmatically, it's super important to have those when it's possible. Unfortunately, on standard objects, you still, to this day, cannot create sharing reasons, which is extremely unfortunate to say the least, and we'll go over why that is so incredibly unfortunate here soon. But in the meantime, let's first go actually create a sharing reason together. So the first thing that you should know is, unfortunately, there is no way to do this, to my knowledge anyway, in the Lightning UI. If you click on each one of these tabs on a custom object, even if the custom object can have sharing reasons added to it, there will be no way for you to do so. So you have to switch over to Classic. And to do that, you just click your little icon guy up in the top in that Switch to Classic link that I just clicked there. And we'll go to Setup by clicking the Setup link in Classic, and we'll head over to Objects down here. And once we get to the object that we like, this guy, then we'll scroll down the object page, and you can see there is a section called Apex Sharing Reasons where we can define Apex Sharing Reasons. Now, if you don't see this, you are experiencing one of two problems. Number one, you're on a standard object, which will not allow you to create these. Or number two, your custom object has a master detail relationship on it. Master detail relationships don't support custom sharing because all of the sharing is managed by its master object, whatever it is. So, if you're not seeing Apex sharing reasons down here, those are the two reasons why you are not. So we'll create one reason together, and I'm just going to call this custom share. But you should absolutely name this something meaningful. It will be critical when you are reviewing shares in your system that you've created programmatically. So don't just create it and name it custom share. Name this something meaningful, just like you should name variables and methods and classes something extremely meaningful in your code. You should do the same for sharing reasons. Now, we've got a sharing reason set up in our custom object. And now let's go into IntelliJ or whatever IDE that you're working in and actually figure out how to create one of these shares together. All right, so we're over here in IntelliJ now, and if you have no idea what the IntelliJ IDE is, you have no idea what an IDE is, and you never used it in Salesforce, definitely check out the tutorials that I will link above and below so that you can set up an IDE and work along here. Trust me, it is so much better than working with the dev console or something like it. So check out those tutorials. It'll take you 20 minutes and you will save an infinite amount of time. So we're over here in the IntelliJ IDE, and we will first start by making a new Apex class together. And I'm just going to call this custom, or actually managed Apex managed sharing example, and zoom in so it's easier for you guys to see. And we'll create two methods in here, one for a standard object share. So we'll say public void standard obj share, and we'll create another method for custom object shares. Now, the first thing that you might be wondering, if you've never done this before, you've never created Apex managed shares or custom shares in general for any object in Salesforce is where do you actually store these shares, right? When you create a new contact record in your Apex, you create a contact and you write that to the contact object. But where do you actually store the shares for that object? It's certainly not on the object itself. So let's go figure out where those tables actually exist. If we head back over into Salesforce and pull up the developer console, you can, in the developer console, open up and take a look at objects. And in the objects, we can do star __ share, where we can see all custom objects that have a share table. Now, this is super important. If you don't see a share table for your object, then you can't create shares for it. Now, there are two primary reasons anyway, that you're not going to see a share object for your custom or share table for your objects. And that's either number one, they're set to public read write, and there's no reason to ever create shares for them anyway because everything is public read write. Or number two, they have a master detail relationship, so it's controlled, all of their sharing is controlled by their parent, and you don't see a share table. In the case of this org related list user preferences, it is a public read write object. So if I wanted the share table to actually show up for it, I need to go to sharing settings, and I need to edit its organization-wide default and change it so that wherever it is, there it is, either one or both of these are set to private or public read only. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to create shares for it. So I'm going to change them to private for both internal and external access and save that. And it's going to recalculate stuff, which should really take almost no time since there are no records on this object. And if I go back into the developer console now, hopefully the developer console doesn't run away on me, I will be able to see a share table for that custom object now. And we do, right? So now we have this org related list user __ C share table, __ share table. So for every custom object that qualifies for a share table, you will find one with an __ share postfix, right? And if I'm not a custom object, then I will just have share on it. So if I wanted to create a share record for the account object, I would use the account share table, no underscores. Same for, say, contacts. There is a contact share table, etc., etc., etc. If you don't see one of these for a standard object, it is because they are, again, either public read write or they have a master detail relationship, like opportunity line items or something. So cool. Wonderful. Awesome. So now we know where we're actually going to write data to in Salesforce, what tables or objects we actually care about. Let's do it. So the first one that we'll do is our custom object share, right? And we'll do so by saying org related list user preference share. And we'll say org share equals new org related list user preference share. And we need to set 4 fields on this share record. We need to set the parent ID, which will be just an ID of a record of an org related list user preferences record. We need to set the user or group ID, basically who we're actually sharing it with. We need to set the access level, which is, are we giving them read or read and edit permission, etc. And we also need to set the share reason, which is going to be our Apex custom sharing reason, or our Apex sharing reason that we just declared a little bit ago. So first things first, let's just go back into our org, and to keep this simple, I'm going to create a new org related list user preferences record. Just to keep this as quick and easy as possible. And I'm going to grab the ID from the URL up here and head back over to Salesforce. So we'll say org share dot parent ID equals that. I want to stress this. Do not ever do this in your code. If you ever hard code an ID in your code, like I'm doing right now, you have made a horrible, terrifying mistake. I'm doing this only because I want to get the point across and not waste too much of your time. Okay, so the next thing that we'll add is the access level. So you have a couple options for access level. There's edit, read, or all. All is actually one that you can't write here. You will see that access level being, if you go review shares, you will see the all access level in there from time to time. But you can actually only use read or edit here. So I'm going to give myself the edit permission. The next thing is I want the org share user or group ID. This user or group ID can be the ID of literally any user or group in your org. So I'm going to just say userinfo.get user ID. So whoever the running user is for this code, their ID is going to be placed there. But this could be a group or a user that you programmatically, find and associate to this record. And last, but certainly not least, we now need to create a row cause. So we'll say orgshare.rowcause, and we'll set it equal to our custom sharing reason. This guy, the one that we created on this object, custom share. Now, you want the developer name for your Apex sharing reason, and you also want to make sure that you put an __C at the end of it. If you don't do that, your code just won't work, and you'll be a sad boy or girl, or whatever. So you actually have two ways of declaring this. You can actually you can do it this way, using a string, which comes in a lot of handy if you're gonna start abstracting things a whole bunch. But you can also use the schema object or class to be able to figure this out. You can say related list user preferences share dot rowcause dot custom share __C. Either one works, and my mouse keeps sliding the pointer places that it shouldn't go. Anyway, so you have two options. You can use this route, or you can use the other route. Really, it's up to you. The previous variety is a little better for super abstract scenarios, but all right. And then we're just going to insert our org share here. All right, and we'll save it. And I think during one of these video cuts where I got interrupted by life, I added the static here to the methods. So just know that I changed my methods to be static at some point, and I forgot to mention it, but now I am. So I'm going to, now that we've updated this code and we've got a share going, I'm going to go into anonymous Apex here and actually make this call to Apex manage sharing example.custom object share, which I already had filled out in here from testing prior to making this. So there you go. But so we've got Apex managed sharing example.custom object share. We're going to run it and see if we actually do get a share for this object created. So let's run it. We've ran it successfully. And if we come back over here to the record that we created together, we can now click on this sharing button, which used to only be available in Classic, but now is actually available in Lightning as well as of last release, I think. And we can see that we do indeed have a custom share built for us, or an Apex managed share, where we have that reason of custom share there, right? Which is awesome, pretty cool. We've got that created. Now, this is great for custom objects, but you will often have to do this for standard objects. And I'm going to show you the massive pitfall for standard objects and what you will have to do to get around it and deal with this, because very often you need to do this for standard objects too, and there is unfortunately not a good way to deal with this. And I say that because let me just demonstrate the problem that we're going to run into here through declarative means. So if I add a share to, say, I don't know, all internal users here, which is like kind of crazy, but whatever. And on a standard object, the only thing I have available to me is manual sharing, right? That's it. That's all I've got. And, you know, that's the way it's kind of always been. But so we've got this manual sharing reason, and we're sharing it with all internal users. Cool. I've got this here, and it looks fantastic. But if I go over here to, you know, the related user, related list user preference, man, that's a long name, and I change the owner, I'll just change it to, I have no idea who the users are in this org. Let me figure that out. Let's go to users, and I've got some guy that I named called JigPig, which you've just gotta like. So let's switch the owner to JigPig. And no? Oh, come on. Pig? Killing me. Okay, let's use the integration user then. See what happens here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's just switch this to the integration user and see what happens. Now if I click on sharing, you can see the custom share has been retained, right? It's still there, all good to go. Awesome. But that manual share we just made disappeared into thin air. And let me tell you, this scenario haunted my life for far too long, several years ago. And this is a huge, gigantic problem for standard objects. And I say that because you have no alternatives for custom sharing with standard objects. I can't create an Apex sharing reason, so it can't retain those shares on a standard object, right? In the event of an owner change. Anytime an owner changes for a record, boom, your manual shares disappear into thin air, and there is no easy way to deal with this. Before we get into the ways that you can work around this problem, let's just first figure out how you could actually create shares for standard objects. So we'll pick the contact object, and I'm not sure how I got so zoomed out here. But let's get zoomed back in, and we will just set up a contact share because it is a little bit different. So we'll say const share equals new contact share, and then we'll do contact share dot contact ID. Instead of parent ID, like for custom objects, we use the actual name of the object dot or ID, and I'll need to find an ID in just a second, and then we'll do cont share dot access level, which again, instead of just regular access level, is contact access level, and we'll set this equal to, we'll just say read for now. Contact share dot row cause, which has to be set to manual. There's really no other options for you here, so we'll just set that to manual. Again, you could also use the schema if you'd prefer, either way. And last but not least, we need to do contact share dot user or group ID, and I'll set that to myself again. All right, and so let's go find a contact ID and try to make some magic happen here. First things first, though, actually, while we're talking through this, those fields will change a little bit depending on the custom object, especially on the standard object. The biggest difference, I believe, is on the account object, where you don't just have account access level, but you also have contact access level, opportunity access level, and case access level that you're supposed to set. So definitely just look out for that, because it will differ a little bit per object. So we've got Mr. JigPig here, and we're going to try and create a record, a share for him. But it is going to throw an error, and I'm going to show you why here in just a second. So we'll bring the code back over here, and I forgot to put an insert statement, so definitely want to do that, or nothing's ever going to work. And then we will run the code over here, and we'll get this, insert failed, first exception on row 0, insufficient access on cross-reference entity. Well, obviously, I don't really suffer from an access issue because I'm a system admin in my org and I can see everything. So what's the problem? Well, when you try to do these shares and you happen to be the owner of what you are sharing to, and you try to create a share for it, well, you get that very honestly incorrect error sent your way. It's extremely confusing. It has stumped me for hours before, and I will try to never let it stump me again. And hopefully you won't have that problem either. But if I switch this to, say, this integration user and save it, and then I run that exact same code again, it magically works, right? So if you ever run into that insufficient access error, just know that it's probably because you are trying to distribute a share to the owner of a record, and Salesforce really doesn't like that, yet it gives you a horrible error that makes almost no sense. And so if I click on sharing now, I should have a manual sharing record in here, and I do, which is fantastic. So again, though, this still suffers from the problem of, what if I change that contact owner again and I changed it to somebody different, like back to myself? Well, even if it wasn't me who was the owner, the manual share disappears into thin air, right? Again. So how do you address this problem? There is no easy way to address this problem. You can create a couple things to get around it, though. You can either, number one, I've done both of these, just depends on your situation. Number one, you can detect an ownership change on your standard object and take the manual shares, store them temporarily, wait for them to be, deleted, which will basically instantly happen, and then reapply them, right? So you could do that in a trigger. Alternatively, you could create like your own share table for that particular object, and that way you could have actual sharing reasons for your standard object link it to both the share table record and the out of the box object that you're working with, and then manage those shares that way. Either way, as you can probably imagine, is complicated. I'm not going to build out that whole scenario for you there, but maybe if there's enough requests, we can build one of those together, and produce some abstract code for everybody to use out there in the world. But anyway, I think this covers all, I hope, that you need to know at a basic level for how to do sharing through Apex Managed Sharing. Don't forget, when you do this, it is your job to not only create the shares, but accurately delete the shares, and potentially, on standard objects, maintain the shares even in the event of an ownership change. All right, I think that about does it. Thank you all for watching the video. If you liked it, make sure to actually hit the like button. Helps me out a ton. Hit subscribe so that you can, be reminded that I upload videos or something. And hit the bell if you want to know exactly the moment that I share anything with you all, whether that's videos or whatever else. And if you want to, definitely consider supporting the channel by becoming a channel member. Helps this channel go a long way to get better and better content. So thank you. You also get cool stuff with it, like extra voting rights, the ability to join a Discord server and ask me questions any day, anytime that I'm awake. And yeah, I think that ought to do it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.